Hi, my name is David Penn. I'm a research analyst with Finovate. We're here at Finovate Fall 2021 in New York, and joining me is Mark Corbett. He is the Senior Solutions Engineer with Backbase. Mark, thank you for joining us today.
It's great to be here.
Yes. I thought maybe to start off we could talk about just a little bit about what Backbase does, particularly the kind of pain points it solves for its customers and clients.
Oh, it's a great question. Backbase is through and through an engagement banking platform. So in many ways, what we're doing is abstracting the downstream systems to create a preferred user experience on the front end. And we do that by integrating with any core system out there, any fintech provider, bringing that into a set of capabilities we have in our center layer, and then orchestrating that up to the user experience so that they can have the best user experience possible. We really pride ourselves in those interactions, and we put a lot of time and research into that.
It's fascinating. A lot of folks who are friends of Finovate are familiar with Backbase, but there are a lot of folks who aren't. I was wondering if maybe you could tell us just a little bit about the backstory of Backbase and how it came to be.
Yeah. So over a decade ago, our founder, Jouk, started in Amsterdam with Backbase, and they were out to kind of solve a problem that a lot of fintechs, a lot of providers weren't solving, which was very much around that user experience in the banking world. What they found was there was a gap. People were logging onto the same banking systems over and over again. They weren't being heard for the experience they truly wanted. And at that time, it wasn't even an omni-channel experience. It was just web-based.
Truly.
Very disparate, very broken experiences. So what they did was they sought out to create that unified platform that brought users into a banking application that they truly loved versus just an application that they have to put up with.
Sure.
And from there, it's just blossomed into what Backbase is today, a global company with over 1,400 employees in every region. And we're simply looking at solving problems for tier 3 banks and up to tier 1 banks.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think for folks who get to know Backbase, both as an international entity as well as what it's done here in the States, you really almost get a history of modern banking. When you look at some of the things that Backbase has done, you point out the fact that what an omni-channel used to be and what it's become now, and to see what Backbase has been able to do along that entire pathway. It's really sort of an interesting journey. Speaking of which, and bringing that journey sort of up to the present time, very challenging times, of course, the past year. I'm curious for Backbase, what are the challenges that you've had or some of your clients have had over this past year, and sort of how some of the ways that you've helped them meet those challenges?
Yeah, so during this current market, what we've noticed is there was this huge delta, this gap that banks were experiencing with their digital experiences and the experiences they were offering in branch. And I think for ages, like you said, we've been talking and kind of telling people the preferred approach is going to be digital forward in the future, but nothing made it more apparent than the pandemic.
Absolutely.
Especially when you legally couldn't go in branch. How do you engage with your customers if you don't have a superior digital experience? And so very much so, our customers who had adopted our digital sales processes, which has to do with onboarding users and initiating some kind of loan experience or some new product, they were able to pivot for the PPP business loans or some other specific government-affiliated loan program that other people who hadn't adopted that platform didn't have that option. Right. They had to build it on their own, which meant that they were held back by the limitations of the market, working virtually, and not having something to build it on, such as an accelerator like Backbase. So in many ways, we saw our customers thrive and kind of go, well, that was fortunate enough that we had invested in this digital first approach.
Absolutely.
We definitely have also learned a lot of lessons from the experience, such as customer dwell time on our applications, learning how to better engage users. And that's kind of what's around the corner as well with our product. We're investing more in those areas so that we can relate and personify people and give them the experiences that they deserve.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know I'm one of the few people who still goes to the bank branch from time to time, and I remember the shock when I realized that I was not going into that door and having to make an adjustment on my own. And I think there are a lot of folks who, both as customers and as people working in banks, had to make that kind of transition. You talked about moving around the corner, so perhaps we could talk a little bit about looking toward the future. From the perspective of Backbase, what do you see as the future of finance going forward, taking with you some of the lessons that the company has learned over this past year, and again, moving forward?
So one of the things that I think a lot of banks are asking themselves in fintechs is, what does my back-end systems look like for my employees? And what does it look like for actually dealing with now this massive digital channel that I've created for my customers? How do I help navigate that. What if I need to see their screens and they aren't going to be in branch or they're in a virtual location? So very much we've built an employee application that helps deal with that, as well as something that we're calling our engagement app. And what that's letting us do is take all this useful data now that we're getting from these increased dwell times from users and all the time they're spending on the portal, and utilizing that for the banks so that they can give them those personal messages, understanding the customer's needs, and most importantly, utilizing credentials that they have from elsewhere in the same data store, the same system, so that they're not asking them to re-input information again and again. We've all had that experience where you log on, you give the bank your info, and then they ask for it again when you want a credit card, and then again when you want a loan. And that just seems like such an archaic process. So Backbase has really sought out to solve some of those challenges.
Yeah. We're here at Finovate Fall, as I mentioned, and the demos are a big part of what we do, a big part of why Backbase is here, I'm sure. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the demo that you're going to be presenting here at the show, and maybe a little bit about the preparation and how the process has been for you.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about the demo. Happy to talk about it. What we've done is taken our existing digital sales product, which is an onboarding for a user like myself. I actually onboard as myself with my ID on stage. So, I'll be expecting some random calls in the near future. But regardless, when I onboard, I get into the business or the consumer banking portion of the demo. And instead of funding that account, we demonstrate that a lot of users may fall off. And they may not actually decide to move forward with that bank as their primary financial institution, which is a huge challenge for a lot of credit unions, neobanks. Some of those people are getting, and also existing banks that just want some more of that share of wallet, and they want to have a more personal relationship with those users, but they can't figure out how to break through. So what we do is we demonstrate the fact that maybe I fall off on that process. How do we engage Mark again? And in doing so, we asked me a series of questions. Like, would you like to maybe port your direct deposit in here, open a credit card, and then link all your bills seamlessly and magically into this application with our partner Payveris? And in doing so, win me over in the end as the primary FI. That kind of creativity, thinking on the fly, is what we're encouraging our customers and other people in the industry to do today with our platform.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And you talk about pain points for financial institutions, and that's got to be a particularly sore one. If you think you've got the fish sort of reeled in, but you can't quite get it into the boat. Very interesting stuff. I'm curious, again, thinking about the breadth of what Backbase has done, what you have seen working with Backbase. Have you had much opportunity to take a look at some of the other demos, some of the other companies are here? Are there things that you, when you come to Finovate, kind of keep an eye open for?
Yeah. One of the things that I've been interested in is how are people solving the challenge of data? So there's going to be a lot more data out there. How are we unifying different disparate fintech systems? And we see some really cool answers to that with some of the demos. Another thing that I'm kind of curious in is the ever-evolving, of course, blockchain discussion and crypto, dollar-backed crypto, et cetera. And I think that that's an interesting market that a lot of the banks and regulators are keeping their eye on. And they're also looking for platforms to help free them up of potentially those whole cores or maybe some new options from different lines of financial technology. And so I'm looking to see who's interested in that and how Backbase may potentially partner with those fintechs in the future.
Really interesting. As we've been talking about, Backbase has been a friend of Finovate for a long time, a very popular company with our audiences. And I'm curious from your perspective, somebody with Backbase, what is it that brings you back year after year to Finovate?
We started as a startup, and we had 300 people when I began at Backbase, and now we're up to, like I said, 1,400. But that startup mentality hasn't changed, and what comes with that is the community, the knowledge gathering, and Finovate is a beautiful example of mature financial technology and banks and those startups that we saw ourselves as a decade ago. So we love to learn from them, engage with them, see how we can work together, and just be a part of this kind of ecosystem of financial technology that's ever expanding. You can't watch that from the sidelines. You have to be involved full on.
Yeah, excellent point. We're very happy to have you in Backbase with us again this year. Again, a longtime friend of Finovate. We always love to see what you all bring to the table and the way that you work with some of the smaller companies here in the ecosystem. So thank you very much for joining us here at Finovate, and thanks for being a part of our interview as well.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
Again, this is Mark Corbett. He's the Senior Solutions Engineer with Backbase. Thanks for joining us.